Welcome to this Wunderbuild tutorial. In this video, we're going to look at how to connect Xero with Wunderbuild and also how we can use Wunderbuild as the bill or invoice approval center once an invoice has been processed from Xero. So first, let's connect Xero to Wunderbuild. How we do that is we go to Settings and Integrations, and then you'll see these two accounting options currently available, and we'll be connecting Xero. So hit Connect on Xero. You can see now it'll ask you to be directed to Xero, so just click Continue. And now you'll choose the organization that you want to connect and just hit Allow Access. Now you can see that the Xero configuration settings come up now that the account has been connected with your Xero account. So what you want to do first is link an income and expense account. So we'll leave this one as sales. And for expense account, let's just choose this one here, Wunderbuild expense. So obviously whatever account you pick here is what information will be sent back to that particular account in Xero if you're processing data from Wunderbuild into Xero. But obviously if you're first processing the bill in Xero to then send to Wunderbuild, you can override this account configuration that's selected here. With these items to sync toggle options, what we'll do is we'll leave bills and progress claims as toggled on, but we'll turn off purchase orders, as ideally we want to manage purchase orders only within Wunderbuild, and we don't want that information then syncing over to Xero with regard to purchase orders. With the next option, job tracking, what we want to do is toggle this on, and what this will allow us to do is send our job or project information in terms of picking up the data from Wunderbuild into Xero, where Xero has tracking categories that we can match up between the two softwares. So what we can do is either type in the existing tracking category name that we've got in Xero. Otherwise, if we haven't created that job tracking category name in Xero yet, we can type that in here and then that'll pick up in Xero. So you can put your own job tracking name in here, like say for example, projects. Otherwise, just leave it as WB job, and then that'll automatically pick up in Xero as the job tracking name that's been entered in Wunderbuild. Okay, with the next option, we've got two-way sync. So what we want to do is toggle both of these options on. And with this latest feature that we've introduced, approve Xero bills when importing, what this allows us to do is first have the bookkeeper or accounts admin or accountant, whoever's entering your bill information, enter it into Xero. And then when that information then gets brought over to Wunderbuild, you as the builder can then use Wunderbuild as the tool to review and approve those bills or receipts. So you no longer have to come up with another system or log into Xero, for example, to review and approve bills. All of that can be done in Wunderbuild. And what you can also do as part of that process is make notes that go back to the accountant or bookkeeper in Xero, so that they get that information in terms of how much to pay or the reason as to why you may not be approving and having an invoice made ready for payment. So you can type in that information will then go to Xero, and then yourself as the builder or project manager can work within Wunderbuild. The accounts admin or bookkeeper, they can work within Xero, and then everyone stays within their own software environment. With the rest of these integration options, you can, for the most part, leave these as the default configurations as shown here. But let's leave all these as the default options for the time being, and then we'll just click Save. And then that'll save all the configuration options, and the data will communicate as we've noted within between Xero and Wunderbuild and vice versa. Okay, so now let's look at a practical example how the data communicates with one another between Xero and Wunderbuild. So I'll go to an example job I've just created here, this one, 38 John Street. Now, within the details section here, if I click edit, you can see I've got Xero Tracking Name and it's set as default. So what that means is that if we don't type in a new tracking category name, what that will do is then take the job number, which in this instance is J01033, and it will use that job number as the tracking name between Xero and Wunderbuild. So Xero will pick up that this is the job number and this is how it'll get allocated in Xero with this job number. However, if we want to rename it to the actual job address or project name, what we can do is just take the job name as we've called it within Wunderbuild. So we'll just copy that, 38 John Street. And then what we want to do is I'll just paste that into here and it'll say create 38 John Street and hit update. So then what that will do is when I go within Xero, I should find that job name 38 John Street that's been assigned as a tracking category, and it will then know to communicate between Xero and Wunderbuild with that job name rather than the default job number. Let's go through the process now of creating a bill in Xero and having that bill come over into Wunderbuild. So we're in the Xero platform now. We'll just go to bills to pay and we'll create a new bill. Now, obviously, if you're using Dext or HubDoc or Easy Bills or something similar like that, you can get this information to automatically populate over, but we'll just do it the standard way of entering the data in manually. So let's just enter in a supplier. And let's upload a invoice, which will also get brought into Wunderbuild from Xero. Okay, description, let's just say this is for frame labor. Let's just put here 10,000. You can see some defaults also automatically populate within here. So that's just within your settings within Xero for these two areas to automatically populate. And now what you can see as well is that we've got this WB job tracking category column. And if you recall, when we go to our Xero integration settings, this is where we toggled this option on and we left this one as the default. But again, you can create your own tracking category name here. And you can see that that's populated here. So we can now select the job from Wunderbuild that we've created. So that was 38 John Street. You can see that automatically comes up based on that tracking category configuration and with the project name rather than the job number, as we discussed earlier. And now what we'd usually do is hit approve here if we were going to approve the invoice through Xero, through whatever process you've currently got in place. However, now what we can do is we can click this drop down button here and hit save and submit for approval. And now what that will do is that'll move the bill to this awaiting approval tab, and it'll also transfer that bill and the associated information over to Wunderbuild. So Wunderbuild can become the approval center for your bills and receipts. Okay, so now let's go back into Wunderbuild and see how that information's come over. So when we're within the jobs menu here, you can see that that bill is now shown as pending invoice. So it'll show up in this job dashboard here, and it'll also come up under the Importable Invoices tab as well. So if it hasn't come over yet, just give it a minute to sync over, but usually it's pretty quick. So now what we would do is we're in the job where we've imported that invoice over to, and we hit Importable Invoices. And you can see here it shows some status options. Currently that bill is unpaid and pending. And you can see it shows the information that's been entered into Xero that's now populated into Wunderbuild. So obviously the supplier information, invoice numbers here, the date, that attachment of the invoice has also been added in, which we can view. And now what we can do is we've got a couple of options. We can either ignore the invoice, which means it'll go back to Xero with some notes for the reason that we're ignoring it, as in not wanting to pay it or not approving it. And we've got the import option as well. So let's look at import first, which is the process we'd go through to approve that invoice. So the first method we're going to use or show for this bill is when we're allocating the bill to a cost category. So we would just go down to this option here where it says costing category, and we'd select the cost category that this bill or invoice applies to. So this is frame labor that we've been billed for. So I've got a frame labor cost category. And what you can do is also click within that cost category, and you might want to assign it to a specific line item within that cost category. So you can do so like that. And now another feature that we've also added in is the ability to split that cost between multiple cost categories and line items. So for example, if I wanted to split this bill between frame labor and let's just say, for example, frame materials and hardware, it gives you the option here. So this bill was 15,000 including GST. Let's just assume we want to split that, and I want to put 5,000 against frame labor, and now the balance against frame materials. You can see that it's automatically calculated the difference and allowed for the balance from this difference of 5,000 to go to this frame materials and hardware cost category that I've just selected. And you can also obviously leave it within the same category as we've originally allocated to, and then split within line items within that category as well. So I might want to allocate it to this line item here, and you can see it's now allowed me to split the cost between line items within the same cost category. Now the other option we can use when we're allocating a bill in Wunderbuild is to allocate to an existing purchase order. So let me just cancel this. Let's go back to import. So if we've created a purchase order in the software and we want to track our costs against a purchase order, which is a committed cost, we would go to this drop down here, find the purchase order that's been created that relates to this bill, and then what we can do is allocate this cost that we've received of 15,000, or this bill I should say, against this purchase order commitment. So if I click here, view purchase order, you can see that this purchase order I've created is for 50,000. I'm getting billed 15,000 and I'm okay with that. So I can use that as a check measure to say, okay, well, what have I committed to pay? Or what have I just been billed? And just make sure that I'm happy to pay that based on the committed purchase order cost. So once we've selected the purchase order, what we would then do is we could select against which line item of that purchase order we wanted to apply the bill to, I should say. And then we don't have to pick the category because we've already selected the cost category when we were creating that original purchase order. And another thing worth mentioning is that before we press import, which will then approve the bill and show the same in Xero, is that we can also add in notes. So For example, we might type something here like okay to pay deposit invoice, for example, and then we'll hit import. So if I now go to imported as my status, you can see it's come up here. And let's just select the job to make it clear. So you can see that it shows imported. And now what it will also show within Wunderbuild, within Xero I should say, is if I refresh this now, you can see that that bill has moved from awaiting approval, and it should now be showing in awaiting payment. There it is. And if I click within this bill as well, I should see that note that I've made. So there it is, that same note that I made within Wunderbuild before I'd approved it has now been also carried over to show in Xero as well. So again, it's just another way that you can communicate with your accounts or admin person or bookkeeper to not only show them that you've approved the invoice, which for them it'll now be in that awaiting for payment tab, but also that it's okay to pay based on the notes that you've made within this section here. So now let's assume that we're ready to pay this bill. So in this make a payment section here, let's add in the information. This is an example, and we'll hit add payment. So now what that will do in Xero is move it from awaiting payment to the paid section within Xero. And now if we go within Wunderbuild, there's a couple of things to show you here where we can track those payments and also the purchase order status. So if I go back to my jobs here, I select that job and I go to purchases bills, you can see that the status of that purchase order is now marked as received based on a bill having been allocated to it. And we can see that we've paid $15,000, and we can also see the difference here. So the total purchase order amount that we've committed to is $50,000. We've paid 15, and that leaves a difference of $35,000, which is this XGST figure here of $31,818 and 18 cents. And we can also click within here to view that bill payment, the specific details again if we want to see the actual bill itself and just see the specifics of the bill information. We can do that by looking at this receipt section here. So that's everything that we've allocated to this purchase order. And under our costings, what we can also see is now that the actual cost has been updated. So in this example, this estimate that I didn't actually have any costs estimated for it, but obviously in real life, you'd obviously have costs allocated to your estimate or to your job, and then actual cost allocated against that estimated or budgeted costs. So yeah, obviously quite powerful when you want to see budget versus actual cost, which you can view here, or also at the cost category level. So if I go to frame labor, I should see that cost allocated here. And obviously it's showing negative because I've got no budget added in. So it's just showing that as a full negative cost. And then at the purchase order level as well, it's quite powerful where we can see actually the costs which have been allocated against a purchase order and know what's left to pay. And what you can also see now is that once it's synced, that payment status is also updated to paid. So you can be confident that whatever's happened in Xero and actually happened from a payment status also updates here. So you can always be up to date with what's actually happening from an accounts and payment perspective in Wunderbuild without having to actually go into Xero. That concludes this Wunderbuild tutorial on Xero integration and how we use Wunderbuild as the approval center from bills that have been imported through from Xero. Please stay tuned for the next video.